पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चान्द्रमसः Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shanti Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shanti Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvasatbuddhimapnotu, sarvasarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We will sing verses from Svatashvatara Upanishad on the last page of your book. Namrita
Good morning. I want to share a story with you that came to mind when Swami invited me to read. And it was coincidental that the week before he asked me to prepare for today, I had done this reading as a homework exercise. As some of you know, we have 2 boys who are in the 4th grade, and they brought home this reading with an assignment to read and write a response. And it stood out for me, and it stood out again when Swami spoke on Mother's Day, because for me this is an example of how we find Vedanta in our everyday life, and both how we can be inspired to seek spiritual guidance through our relationships with other people, but also find spiritual insight in those interactions. And so I'm going to read to you this story, which I found it's both simple and has more to it than it appears on the surface. It's from a book, Tibetan Tales for Little Buddhas, and the story is called Yeshi's Luck. Before I start, there is one section where, for those of you who speak better than I do, you'll have to forgive my pronunciation. Nestled among the tallest mountains of the world is the land of Tibet. In the foothills of those mountains lies a village, and in the village lies Yeshi with his father and their house. One morning, Yeshi dashed into the stone cottage. Pa, our goat is gone. Yeshi's father pulled on his dusty boots, tightened his sash, and stepped into the cool air. Squinting at the snowy peaks, he breathed deeply. Yeshi scowled. Come on, Pa, we must find our horse. Yeshi and his father trampled through the tall grasses, peering behind boulders and over thick brush. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi's father. How can you chant now? Asked Yeshi. That won't help us find our horse. Chanting helps me have a peaceful mind, replied his father. Yeshi kicked the dirt. Several villagers happened by. What are you looking for? Our horse, cried Yeshi. We'll help. The villagers searched all day with Yeshi and his father. At nightfall, Yeshi wept. What bad luck! We lost our only horse. What terrible fortune, chimed the villagers. Who can say what is good fortune or bad? Asked Yeshi's father. Give thanks for everything. Yeshi and the villagers exchanged puzzled looks. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi's father. After several days, some villagers arrived at Yeshi's house. Your horse is in the meadow. He brought a surprise. Come quick. Yeshi raced out the door. His father and the villagers hurried behind. When Yeshi reached the meadow, he blinked hard. A new horse was grazing alongside Yeshi's. Oh, this is good fortune, said Yeshi. Now we have 2 horses. Your horse running away was good luck after all, chimed the villagers. Yeshi's father smiled. I am grateful, but who can say if this is good fortune or bad? Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi's father. And Yeshi and the villagers exchanged puzzled looks. Yeshi and his father swiftly trained their new horse. One day, as Yeshi galloped through the meadows, the new horse bucked him off and high into the air. Ow! Screamed Yeshi. He crumbled to the ground. Help, my leg! Some villagers rushed to Yeshi. A man lifted Yeshi into his arms and headed up the hill. The others followed. Yeshi's father met them at the door. Pa, moaned Yeshi, our new horse was bad luck after all. Oh, such terrible fortune, chimed the villagers. Yeshi's father placed the boy onto the straw bed. I'm sorry to see my son hurt, but who can say what is good fortune or bad? Yeshi and the villagers exchanged puzzled looks. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi's father. Yeshi grimaced while his father wrapped his leg in clean rags. Finally bandaged, his leg throbbed in pain. Yeshi gazed at his father in the glow of the butter lamp, and he listened to his soft chanting. Om Mane Padme Hung, Om Mane Padme Hung. I've heard Pa chant a lot, thought Yeshi, but it never sounded so beautiful. Warmth filled his heart. Tears slipped down his cheeks. That's odd, he thought. My leg has stopped hurting. Maybe there's something to the chant. Could it be that my Pa is wise after all? He listened to his father chant as the moon rose high in the sky. Yeshi awoke to a villager knocking on the door. Have you heard? Military officers are here. They're taking our boys away to fight in a battle. But you don't have to go because of your hurt leg. My, Yeshi said, falling off the horse was good luck, after all. He glanced at his father. But I guess no one really knows what's good fortune or bad. Yeshi thought he saw his father smile. More villagers came. Such good fortune for Yeshi, but such bad fortune for our boys. I'm scared for my friends too, replied Yeshi. But who can say what's good fortune or bad? The villagers exchanged puzzled looks. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi with his father. It took many weeks for Yeshi's leg to mend. Soon after, villager ran up to Yeshi. Our boys are back. They're safe. They've even brought new friends to join the village. Yeshi grinned. At the homecoming celebration, Yeshi sang, Life is like a potter's clay, changing shape from day to day. As stars sparkle in the sky, light and dark go quickly by. What's the future? No one knows. Be at peace with how life goes. The villagers exchanged smiles. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi's father. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted the villagers. Om Mane Padme Hung, chanted Yeshi. Om Mane Padme Hung.
Good morning. I'll be reading from the book Knowing the Knower, written by Swamiji himself. Swamiji, thank you. It's a book on Gyan Yoga, and I'll start from the first chapter, which has a title called Knowledge. An earnest student named Sanoka went to sage Angirasa and asked him, "Tell me, master, what is that knowing which everything becomes known?" This simple question from the Vedas provides a good starting point from the study of Gyan Yoga, the spiritual discipline woven around the cognitive function of the mind. It is easy to imagine Sonaka's quandary. Hungry for knowledge, Sonaka had realized that there were just too many things to be known, but not enough time and energy to know them all. Wouldn't it be convenient if we needed to know just one thing, knowing which everything would become known? After all, it is possible to have a master key that opens all the keys in a house, or a master password that unlocks all the passwords. So Sanaka's question is not unreasonable. Is there a master knowledge that will remove all my ignorance in one stroke? Not all may express their need in precisely the way Sanaka did. Whichever way it is expressed, we human beings seems forever hungry for knowledge. Our seeking after knowledge begins soon after birth. We can see it in the eyes of a baby as she scans the world and the people around her. We can see it in the way a child turns the pages of a book, or more likely today, swipes the pictures on a smartphone or other mobile devices. We can see it when students pore over library books, reporters cover events for the media, chefs experiment with new recipes, people browse through newspapers in coffee shops, and the elderly swap stories in retirement home. We can see it when people are at work or on vacation, when they are at their desk or on a hike, and when they are conversing with friends or ruminating in solitude. No matter where we are and no matter what we are doing, we are always trying to know something. The only difference, perhaps, is that while some people do it consciously, most others do it unconsciously. In some, the hunger to know is intense, and in others, it is muted. But the quest for knowledge seems inbuilt in living beings. We wouldn't feel the need to know something if we already knew it. Our quest for knowledge is an admission of our lack of knowledge. Our desire to know springs from our ignorance, more accurately, from the knowledge of our ignorance. When we know something, our ignorance regarding it is dispelled. Just as when we turn on the lights in a room, the darkness in that room is dispelled. Kinds of knowledge. So what are the kinds of knowledge? When we begin to know deeply about knowledge, we quickly realize that the answers we get depend on the kind of questions we ask. The first obvious question is, what is knowledge? While we understand the meaning of knowledge, it is not easy to explain what knowledge really is. It's one thing to know the meaning, it's quite another to define the term. It might be easier to say what knowledge does than what knowledge is. As far as doing goes, knowledge removes ignorance and leads to freedom. Ignorance is the power to constrict our ability to think deeply or to do certain things. Knowledge removes the barriers and frees us from those limitations. Both ignorance and freedom need to be examined carefully in order to fully understand what knowledge is and what it does. And this is something we'll explore later in the book. Another question is, how does knowledge arise? The answer is simple enough. It arises from our contact with the world. The world impinges on the mind as sensations of sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. To grasp each of these 5 sensations, we have 5 receptors called senses or indriyas: eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and skin. Because these senses are the first link in a process that leads to knowledge, they are called senses of knowledge. Gyan plus indriya is equal to Gyan indriya. Where the sensations are fed to the mind, they form impressions, samskaras. What the mind does is best described as pigeonholing. It compares a new impression with its stored past impressions, and when it finds a match, it files the new impression in the right box. For instance, when our eyes detect something, the sensation is carried to the mind, where it forms an impression and the filing process begins. When the mind finds, let's say, that the impression matches those in box labeled animal, it files the impression there, producing the knowledge, this is an animal. The mind may further detect that it also matches a subcategory called dog, producing knowledge, this animal is dog, or simply, this is dog. The mind can also rearrange its stock of impressions, discover patterns, and gain new insights. How deep a knowledge I have will depend on the number of impressions in my mind and how accurately those impressions are filed. A mind with rich store of organized impressions will tend to have greater knowledge than less endowed mind. Whatever the quality of the mind, it is always from out there that the sensations enter into it, forms impressions, and are placed in pigeonholes and produce knowledge. When an impression is placed in a wrong pigeonhole, it leads to false knowledge, but knowledge nonetheless. This kind of knowledge is often more damaging than plain ignorance. Most people spend their entire lives gathering knowledge of external objects. A few, though, are not satisfied with what's out there. It doesn't quite quench their thirst for knowledge. So they turn their gaze inwards in order to find what is in here. Questions about what's out there never end, and the task is never quite fulfilling. Many have found it more exciting to ask questions about one's own self. Who is this person asking questions about the world? Who is this person seeking knowledge? Such questions concern not the object of perception, but the person who is perceiving them. No matter what the inquiry is directed, towards the object of perception or towards the perceiver, the instruments used in the process are the same, namely the senses and the mind. The knowledge that is filtered through the senses and the mind is indirect. It is filtered after all. It's not the same as the original. It's changed somehow, perhaps in significant ways. Most of the knowledge we acquire is indirect. Even the knowledge from books which are believed to be revealed scriptures such as the Vedas, the Bible, the Quran is indirect. The knowledge acquired via the internet, thank you Google, is indirect too, as is the knowledge gathered from conversations with friends or from lectures and classes. Come to think of it, the knowledge we acquire through all these sources is better described as information about everything that's out there. To the extent it makes us think and reorganize our thoughts in the mind, all such information may lead to knowledge, but it is indirect knowledge nonetheless. There is no end to the knowledge which concerns the objects of our experience. This world has innumerable living and non-living objects of mind-boggling varieties in size, shape, and color and quality. No wonder the knowledge of the world appears to be inexhaustible. Empirical sciences deals with this kind of knowledge admirably well. Every door that science opens through its breakthroughs reveals another door waiting to be opened. Every mystery that is solved reveals more mysteries that needs solving. The knowledge of the world seems doomed to remain incomplete. It can be endlessly stimulating, and no one doubts that it is enormously fascinating and useful. What no thoughtful person can honestly deny is that knowledge of the world is incapable of bringing total and lasting fulfillment. At least it hasn't done so yet, which is why it is called lower knowledge. Since all our current knowledge seems to be lower, it is not unreasonable to ask what kind of knowledge is higher. The answer is, first, higher knowledge does not merely inform, it reveals the highest truth. Second, and this is even more important, higher knowledge totally bypasses the senses and the mind, which is why it is direct and pristinely pure. It reveals reality as it truly is. Higher knowledge does not concern the world. It concerns the knower of the world. Knowing the world occurs through lower knowledge. Knowing the knower occurs through higher knowledge. Those who have tried to acquire the knowledge of the knower find it to be infinitely more fascinating than the knowledge of the world. Not many may seem inclined to do so. It is true, since it is considerably more easy to look out than to look in. The natural inclination of the mind and the senses is to go out. It needs tremendous willpower to take a U-turn, to stop looking at the world for a change and start looking into the heart. No matter how challenging the process of looking inward is, those who persevere find their efforts generously rewarded with peace, joy, freedom of a magnitude they had never experienced before. Their testimony may prove beyond doubt that the quest for higher knowledge leads to total and lasting fulfillment when the knower is known.
By Rabindranath Tagore. Here is its English translation. O Lord, you I have made my poster. Lose my way I never will on these seas ever again. Wherever it is I go, my guiding light do remain shine your luminance upon. My tears when they freely flow. Enthroned is your face deep within, a secret that is mine alone. I find myself in deep despair. If ever I lose sight of you, away from path of righteousness, if ever my heart goes astray, all I do is recall that face, to see my heart recoil in shame. জাগিবেছে শঙ্খধ্বনি, দিনে গো অন্তর হলে নাহে রে কোনো কিনারা। কখনো বিপথে যদি ধ্রুবিতে চাহে এ হৃদে, কখনো বিপথে যদি ধ্রুবিতে চাহে এ হৃদে, অমনি উন্মুখ হেরে সরবেশে হয় সারা। তোমারে আছি জীবনে ধ্রুবতারা, এ সমুদ্রে আরো কভু হব না কো পথহারা। তোমারে আছি জীবনে ধ্রুবতারা।
Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. I would like to read to you a small story that comes in the Sufi tradition. It's titled "The Tale of the Sands," and this is how it goes. A stream, from its source in far-off mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, at last reached the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one, but it found that as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. It was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert, and yet there was no way. Now, a hidden voice coming from the desert itself whispered, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream." The stream objected that it was dashing itself against the sand and only getting absorbed, that the wind could fly, and this was why it could cross a desert. By hurtling in your own accustomed way you cannot get across. You will either disappear or become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination. But how could this happen? By allowing yourself to be absorbed in the wind. This idea was not acceptable to the stream. After all, she had never been absorbed before. She did not want to lose her individuality. And once having lost it, how was one to know that it could ever be regained? The wind, said the sand, performs this function. It takes up water, carries it over the desert, and then lets it fall again. Falling as rain, the water again becomes a river. The stream asked, "How can I know that this is true?" The sand said, "It is so. And if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire. And even that could take many, many years. And it certainly is not the same as a stream." The stream asked, "But can I not remain the same stream that I am today?" The whisper said, "You cannot in either case remain so. Your essential part is carried away and forms a stream again. You are called what you are even today because you do not know which part of you is the essential one." When the stream heard this, certain echoes began to arise in the thoughts of the stream. Dimly, she remembered a state in which she, or some part of her, was it, had been held in the arms of a wind. She also remembered that this was the real thing, not necessarily the obvious thing to do. And the stream raised her vapor into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily bore it upwards and along, letting it fall softly as soon as they reached the roof of a mountain, many, many miles away. And because she had had her doubts, the stream was able to remember and record more strongly in her mind the details of the experience. She reflected, "Yes, now I have learned my true identity." The stream was learning, but the sand whispered, "We know, because we see it happen day after day, and because we, the sands, extend from the riverside all the way to the mountain. And that is why it is said that the way in which the stream of life is to continue on a journey is written in the sands." When a Vedanta student reads a story like this, we are at once reminded of the emphasis on discovering our identity that is often laid in different spiritual texts, although it's couched in different language and approaches from a different angle. As we saw in the first reading today, that sometimes we make a judgment about what is good fortune or what is bad fortunes. Sometimes we believe something to be good, and in retrospect, it turns out to be not so good. And something which at one point appears to be not so great, later on it appears to be, well, that was a great good fortune. So since it's never easy to know whether something is good or bad in the moment, because sometimes our later experiences change our earlier perception, what is within our capacity and our power is to look at our true identity and hold on to that identity as we navigate the sands of life, without pausing to judge over whether something is a good fortune or a bad fortune, because these ups and downs will occur in every life. But so long as I'm holding on to my real identity, none of these other things will matter. But the problem, the challenge that the stream faced was that it wasn't able to cross the desert. The desert stands for the different difficulties and challenges that we have come across in life. So how do we cross these difficulties? How do we go on the other side? And as we saw, the message that the stream was given, that it should allow this power of the wind to carry it across. In theistic language, that power of the wind is God's grace. If I can let go of my present limited and ephemeral, temporary, constantly changing identity, the way to give that up is to then surrender it to a higher power, which is also the theme of the song, the first song that we had. The second song, yeah. It's the power of God. Call it in a devotional language, we can think about it as grace. In the language of philosophy, part of which was the second reading this morning, about discovering our true identity, the knower, the real knowledge within our own heart, the true core of my being. If the way to discover that, the way to find that, is to first surrender the present identity. One of the difficulties that most of us have is this, that most people recognize at some level that there is a higher truth behind this entire existence. That there is, even if not everyone might refer to that higher truth as the word God, because a lot of people today don't like to see themselves as religious. Feeling that I'm spiritually is a better. People find it not so controversial to say I'm spiritual, but religious, it doesn't carry the same weight. Irrespective of how we see ourselves and what language we use, I like to believe that in most hearts there is a recognition at some level that there is a higher truth. There is something more than what we experience in life. And even when we know how to reach that, how to access that, how to get in touch with it, the price that we have to pay to reach that is sometimes seems a bit too much. Because oftentimes the price is I cannot get my true identity unless and until I let go of the present identity, which appears to be true, but from the perspective of that higher identity, my present lower identity is not so true. It's a little bit like let me see. It's when we think about it this way. It's a very crude example, but think about it this way: when you get your new credit card, then of the same, so the one credit card has expired, and you get a new one. Then you cannot use the two at the same time. If you want to use the new one, you have to discontinue the previous one. In the same way, wonderful as it sounds, I want to be a child of God. I want to be connected with God. I don't think most people would have a problem with that. The problem is, in order for me to be connected with God, I need to be disconnected with my present limited identity. And that's the problem. And that's the challenge that's the hesitation that the stream was having. And that's why the stream asked, would I be the same now if I surrender myself to the wind, later on when I'm deposited on the other side of the desert, would I be the same? And the answer was, well, I would be better than what I am now, because the stream as it is now is, because of a lot of pollution and a lot of stuff, the water is not so great. But when the wind takes it up and deposits it on a mountainside on the other side in the form of rain, it's purified. So our identity right now is not although I refer to it as a false identity, in not so much a false identity as my true identity mixed up with a lot of other things. And what surrendering ourselves to God means, what taking up spiritual life seriously means, is that I allow the impurities that I have gathered, my present identity, those impurities are removed. And when the impurities are removed, I get my true identity. So I think that's a better way to see it. Not in terms of true and false, but false identity is really the true identity mixed up with a lot of junk. Get rid of the junk and the true identity remains. So there's a lot to reflect on. Many of these stories, and often called tales, from different traditions, simple as they are, most if you kind of reflect over it, it's just common sense in some ways. But even reading these simple stories like this gives us an opportunity to reflect and connect it. I think that's the challenge. That whatever reading that we do, that it should somehow not limit itself only at the cerebral level. The only way all of our studies can descend in our heart if the insights that we acquire from a reading are somehow directly related to our specific life situation, either in our day-to-day life scenario or in some of the ultimate questions of life. Then that insight becomes our own. It kind of gets inside us. And then there is some chance that it may have a transformative power. So that's the tale of the sands. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So after this we'll have Sarvamangala, and then we'll go and have soup outside. The programs for next week, next Sunday for the satsang, our subject will be Improve, Change, Pray. On Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of Bhakti Sutra, and Tuesday and Saturday, our Aarti and meditation will also continue as usual. So let's do the prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.